Preparing to live stream.
Here we go.
Have you got a NASA type checklist?
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. The millions of you out there and on the air watching us. We've got a little bit better crowd this week than we did last week. Oh, how's everybody been doing this week?
Hey, Zen.
Are we going to do intros or should I just go straight to my SEO 1A question?
Let's just go do some intros first. Yeah. Terry, tell us who the hell you are and what you do.
Terry Van Horn. I don't do anything. I just take up space.
Simon?
Simon Cox from Lingfield in the UK, technical SEO, and I do everything really, just not just that. I've been doing print stuff this week. That's me.
Sarah?
Hi, Sarah Altera. I'm in the Pacific Northwest in the United States, and I write for the web.
And Steve.
Steve Gretzer, and I complain about the space that Terry takes up.
I can't top
That's
that one. So I'm Doc Sheldon, and I'm Tech SEO and with WebNarwhal, like Steve. So you said you had a question, Sarah? Fire away.
Yeah. So one of my little tasks is to English language optimization for web pages. So I do the title and I do the meta description, et cetera, et cetera. And one page that I was working on this morning is category page. So when you go to that page, you get all the posts that relate to that particular category. So I'm wondering either or on the title and the meta description, do you include that that's a category page, or do you just go, team building, blah, 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 whatever.
On the category page itself?
Yeah, on the category page itself.
I always do. I don't know that it's really essential, but I
Okay.
think, for the users, it's helpful if the URL shows it as a category of, men's
Of
clothing,
whatever, so they're
Yeah.
going to get a whole list of whatever is in that category.
Well, on the URL, they're going to see the domain / category / whatever the category is. And then if they're on one of the posts, they're still going to see the category in the URL. That's the way I normally do it.
Okay.
But I know others that don't. I tend to block tags and I only index categories if it's something like an e-com, or if there's a great disparity in topics. For somebody, if it's a recipe site, for instance, I would probably do a category for desserts, for main dishes, side dishes, that sort of stuff. But if it's just a mommy blog talking about, if it's all about exercise or fitness, I probably wouldn't bother. Simply because I don't see that I'm going to get a lot of benefit from indexing those categories separately. And I don't see that the users are going to get a lot of benefit because it's all pretty much one category.
Well,
That's me.
okay. Yeah, well, this in this particular instance for funding source for IoT and the like, this category is about team building. How do you create a successful team when you're coming to ask for money, as it were?
I have a
Sure.
slightly different thing about categories.
What?
With the way, since Google now, most categories are entities. So
Yeah.
one of the best ways to get all the stuff about an entity on one page is a category page. So you make slightly longer excerpts. I make them about 100 words. rather than the smaller excerpts that WordPress uses.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it works out well. I also, two things, it's hard to control the title on a category page because the category is actually stored by WordPress in CSS, as we could believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to watch that. And I also add the description at the top before the post roll,
Mhm.
right? And after the second page, that description disappears.
Okay.
And I do something similar to Terry. I make sure that on all the category pages, there's a paragraph or two on the first category page explaining what that category is all
Yeah.
about, to kind
Definitely.
of set the stage for everything that follows it. I found that if I don't include that, because some website owners don't want that blurb at the top of their page, they don't tend to do as well for some reason. And I really think it's back to that entity thing that Terry was talking about, where we're setting the stage so Google is very well prepared and understands that everything here is about this overarching topic, and then everything below this is going to be individual elements of that topic.
Yeah.
That's why I use longer excerpts as well, Steve, to get more text on the page.
Mhm.
And what people don't really, I think, get is that Google, when it sees all these category pages, if you're no indexing them, that's not a good strategy, because you're actually telling Google that I don't want you to see this page. When you
There's no
say
value.
that to Google, they think users shouldn't see this page either.
Either, yep.
And it's a negative towards your website. Sorry.
I think it's worth mentioning there too that, an error I see an awful lot with small sites, especially like blogs. They'll put up a new post and they'll assign 11 different categories to it.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
So
That's
any
11
chance
different-
you had to tell the search engine or the user what this is about, you just blew it out the window. I mean,
Yeah. You know what? We talked about that on this many years ago.
The other problem with that is that's 11 duplicate content issues.
that too,
Yeah.
yeah. Which is not necessarily a penalty, but it certainly confuses the algorithm.
And one of the biggest problems I see when they make too many categories.
Yep.
And therefore they have too many categories with one or two posts. When you're making categories, think that you want to be able to put at least 5 posts on that page. So don't broaden your categories, broaden your categories, don't narrow them. Simon, you have any thoughts on that?
I've got a load of thoughts on this. Category pages, as has been said by everybody so far, are normally dynamically generated by a CMS. And as Terry has said, people do just chuck all sorts of categories in. So you need to step back from that and think about the taxonomy of the whole site. And when people are writing those blog posts, they need to fit into categories that the business or the site is about. So you should have that all mapped out before. So when you're writing your content for those blog posts, you say, right, we're going to do this category, this campaign, etc., etc. Once you do that, maybe you would have topic pages at a top level of the page that then actually also have sort of a list at the bottom of the have the list of the posts that go with that. The category page itself, most sites, even if you can put some content in at the top, link it back to a topic page about the same category. And therefore, you've got a much more controllable category page where you've got some subpages off it and then all your blog posts. And then that, or if you've all your blog posts also link back to the main topic category page, as opposed to the dynamic category page, I think you stand a much better chance of getting some authority into what you're talking about, because most of the stuff is dynamically generated and it's pretty awful, which is why people no index it.
Yeah.
because it's just a list of stuff, which is
Well, like-
useful for some people if they want to look into a particular category and get all the blog posts about that. But you need to do more than that. You need to think about how it fits into the whole site and build those extra topic pages to mirror that category and build that out more with subtopics, and then links down back and forth between the blog posts and that to build up your estate and get that taxonomy working in there.
But that kind of dovetails with what Terry was saying. Most categories are going to be entities.
Yes,
And
indeed.
the last thing you want to do is confuse the search engine about what your entities are about. So when you start talking about, if you've got, let's say it's a blog about pets, and you've got pets, and then you've got pet beds, and then you've got, pet care, and you've got cats and parakeets, and what the hell is the search engine going to make of all that? Basically, the best it can do is say, okay, non-human. So, make them relevant to each other as entities. Now, all categories aren't going to be entities, but I think it's fair to assume that the vast majority are going to be.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
One more thing I wanted to add is just more of a technical issue with WordPress. There is the ability to create custom excerpts for your blog posts in there.
Mhm.
And if you write your own custom excerpts that are specifically calls to action about why they should read that blog post,
Yep.
that is a huge help when you're looking at massive category pages, because most people are lazy, and I get it, and they only let WordPress take the first whatever number of words it is from the blog post. But not every blog
50
post starts
words.
off good. They start off with some kind of gibberish, and especially like if you look at recipe sites, the mommy blogger sites, where the first half of the blog post is about how they came across this recipe while camping with their great aunt in the Ozarks, and
Yeah,
nobody cares. They want the recipe.
Which is funny
So-
is because they do that actually because of misfounded SEO advice in the first place.
Right.
Well,
They added all
everybody's
that extra
tell,
stuff in. Yeah.
It's all
everybody's telling
that-
everybody
it's
how
all
important
that
storytelling is.
Storytelling
It's not
stuff.
just storytelling. There's one of the things where they've really thrown it at them, this idea that word count is a ranking signal. So they just
yeah.
kind of throw that at them over and over again. It goes, now you have to do this, you have to do this like that. And they just kind of like, oh, let's pad this out and make up this whole adventure of me and my grandmother in Italy and stuff like that. And it's just over and over again. Everybody's kind of like, I don't want to see that. I just want to damage.
You know,
I want the recipe, right?
Yeah.
I have had clients before that said that, well, my readers enjoy this stuff, and this is what I'm going to do. I said, okay, then fine. At least put a jump link at the top,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
that if they do land there and they want just the recipe without the crap, they got an immediate jump link to the recipe.
Yeah. Or at least use the recipe microdata, whatever that is, to do it.
Schema.
And so that'll at least help somebody.
Yeah.
on that
Well,
side.
So
yeah,
if you're
but
looking
not-
up how long do I boil the hard-boiled egg for, and like you go, oh yeah, oh Florence, I've been there. It's really nice. Oh, the egg's spoiled. Yeah. 'Cause that happens every time the recipe sites is a good
Yeah.
example.
I don't mind that so much. It's funny. This is slightly off, but I do it a lot more with cocktails than I do with recipes these days. But but I like the history bit. But usually, like I notice most cocktail writers will put that history bit afterwards. Like they'll go, boom, here it is. Just get the thing done. And then there's for the geeks like me that want to know, like, oh, this first originated in Florence at a little bar that was by an American that came over during the war. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that.
So Jeff, what's your advice for people who are doing like, some kind of recipe or, steps to whatever, is to put the steps first and then have all that history and stuff for the people who want to know that stuff?
I would always say put the history after all of those things and get to just kind of lead with it and just classic Food Network ingredients, steps, the whole thing to it, and then kind of get into it afterwards. And you can even put somebody else suggested a jump link that can take you down. It says for information on the origins of this, boom, whatever it is. But like if they really feel like they need to word counted up, which is wrong, but it's like
Right.
then they can do that afterwards. But and if they really believe that like my users, my readers enjoy this kind of stuff, then put it afterwards. But it's
Well, I think the key is,
Yeah.
assuming that you had a decent placement in the SERP and you had a decent meta description to get them to click on it in the SERP, let's give them something above the fold that's going to let them believe that they may have landed where they wanted to be.
Yeah, I agree.
And hiding it behind a bunch of fluff is not going to do it.
Yeah, or maybe a call out, just put a box out for the side, just to like and wrap everything around it. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do it rather than just yeah. And they're only slightly interesting. If they were really interesting about the story about you and your grandmother, I would, this would be great, but they're usually not. And they're all about you and your grandmother. You notice that it's something, I don't know how that's possible, but everybody cooked with their grandmother.
That's exactly right. You've got to think about the user intent, and they're going to want to see the recipe and the bits in it. That's probably why they're there. They're very probably not looked up that person, search for that person's interesting grandma in Florence or whatever it is. They're going to be looking for that recipe. So have it afterwards means they can bang the recipe. And if you're lucky, they'll have a bit of time and they'll read the rest of it and they'll come back because there's more interesting stuff with each recipe. But if they get the recipe first every time, they'll keep coming back to the site. And a very good example of this is the BBC Good Food. They've got nothing about their grandmas. It's just the recipe. That's why I use it all the time. I'm like, that's where I want to go.
Oh, yeah.
It's a recipe, and it tells me exactly what I need and how to do it. Boom, done.
Yeah,
Just the facts, ma'am.
If it had stuff afterwards,
Exactly,
it's great. If I've got a few minutes when I'm cooking something, then I'll read it. But yeah, do that first. Give the user what they need.
Yeah.
And they'll come back.
Punch Magazine's good for that, for on the cocktail side of things. All the Epicurean brand sites usually know how to move that around. Sometimes even I actually give those credit for actually springing 2 articles from it. They're pretty smart in the idea where they'll have one article that's really about making the cocktail, whatever it is, and then they'll write another one that's about the whole history that links back over to how to make it. So if they can catch some people with this one, then catch with the other one. It's really smart. But,
That's smart approach.
Yeah.
And it gives you a good chance for some internal linking.
Yeah.
If in
Exactly.
any doubt, take your top 2 posts and do a test. One with a recipe or whatever it is, maybe Zara's bit first, and then the diatribe second, and the other one the other way around, and see what happens.
Diatribe.
It's a great way to.
Well,
Slightly biased.
I was thinking about that because another thing that happens is like, how to fix your toilet seal, or all those do-it-yourself how-to thingies, and they can do the same thing. Start off with a story about whatever, and then halfway down the page, you finally get to the instructions. First do this, then do that, then do that. Make
So
sure
that's a
you
how-to.
add,
Yeah.
You really want jump links at the top. How to step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah,
step
you
4.
want that.
Yeah, what you'll need.
You can fill them out.
what you'll need.
with-
Yep.
Yeah. I think
I
the only
break
time
my
I've
hammer, etc.
Yeah, well, that's actually some of the point I was getting to. So I do woodworking as well, and I think the only time I have an exception where I actually like to see a little bit of the story, and it's not about your grandmother, but it's one of the things where like it's at least this person's adventure in building this thing, where they usually kind of detail, this is all the times I screwed up on the road to actually making this thing, and that kind of detail is usually very helpful. And then you get down to it where like, all right, here's the thing and the link to the PDFs for the templates and all that kind of stuff. That's usually pretty helpful. But even then, I've seen them write it in a way that they go like, if you want to jump to this, fine. But like most people are like me are going to go, all right, make sure not to do any of this. Like it's and sometimes you get that with the cooking recipes, but that's ultimately what like I want to see, and that's the way that I know Food Network used to write that, and Epicurean used to write it that way, where it would be kind of an adventure in the test, whatever it is, where they said, all right, we did our food kitchen experiments, whatever it is, and trying to make the best omelet, or we tried to do this, and this is how we do this kind of things, and we tested a dozen eggs, whatever it is, and here's ultimately what it was. But I usually see that come up. Those types of articles usually come up around major cooking holidays, like whatever it is. And I remember the last one I read was about like gravy, or like he goes, this is everything we did to get gravy perfect, right? And it was just this massive test, and they had multiple teams running, and they did a video along with it. It was just like a perfect collection of content that they had put together for this kind of thing, and that included like good details on what to do and everything. But they did another one, mashed potatoes too. Like they usually have something like that where it's like, this is that basic thing that you usually screw up every year, and like and here's why, kind of thing. And it's perfect, but it's actual content. It's not, like,
Well, that is actual content, because that is, that is the warning. Here are the things that can go wrong and how you can avoid them, which is good information.
Well, it's just, it's a matter of avoiding fluff just for word count,
avoiding fluff is a serious concern.
Yeah.
At least for me.
What else happened this week that's worth some discussion?
Anyway,
Terry?
thanks, everybody.
No, anytime.
You bet. Terry, did you come across anything this week that got your dander up?
Oh yeah, no, I ain't going there.
Not going to go there. Huh?
I noticed Rand went after Danny Goodwin for talking back to him about domain authority. That was one I actually got on. I got him on my Twitter about it, but Rand blocked me forever ago. But like I just posted and let Danny Goodwin. At least he was fighting the good fight on this one, and that was a really horrible thing to do back to him and everything. So
I really should spend more time on Twitter. I miss all the fun drama.
I kind of miss it, and I kind of don't. I don't get back there as much as I used to, and use of the time it's really gets ugly, and it's not even just with the SEO stuff. It's obviously everything else that's ugly in there. But yeah, I don't know.
I've managed to hold to my resolution to stay away from Twitter as much as possible.
Yeah, it's a dark place. I've noticed it. But yeah,
there's still beautiful nuggets of gold in there.
Mhm.
If you ignore all the crap like I do, just whiz through it and pick out the bits I want to. It's great.
Yeah.
And I take the piss out of a lot of people. That helps.
That's always good to get the blood going. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I created a new handle so I could rattle people's cages about the hockey stuff in baseball.
That's funny.
Love doing that.
That can be a good time killer.
Handle? Oh, that's great.
A new hobby for me could be, who can I take the piss out of today?
I've got one of those that's originally was done as for entertainment, like just a comment on entertainment or whatever it is, to keep that out of my regular like feed, and then it just became like a great way for me to go out and pick on politicians and things like that too. So yeah, it's been handy, but I have to hold myself back. That's an easy rabbit hole to go down to if you get you do the right one. Even the entertainment people gets angry. There's so much anger on this stuff. Or when we got when the Batgirl movie got canceled, there was one of the things where like just some of the comments early on were really, really dumb. Like people had just never heard of anything like that happening before. And I was going, well, but it does happen. It happens quite a bit. It's called shelving. It's why they even have a term for it. It's these things happen. And this type of like big write-off style one, it's happened a few times in the past. But and what's funny is that like the person that said, I've never heard this happen before, was a guy who was supposed to be in the business of reviewing movies. Like he had just actually listed himself as a movie reviewer. I go, well, maybe.
How old was he?
Yeah. Not enough to, not old enough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's a self-anointed drunken Scot that decided he wanted to become a movie reviewer, and it was pretty.
There's a reason they created the direct-to-video category.
Yeah,
it's for movies just like that. Yeah. We know it's going to be horrible, but somebody's going to want to watch it. So let's recover some of our money.
Back in the old days, they it's like direct to video, and then with all the streaming stuff, there's so many different channels. So I remember when I was doing work for Sony, like the stuff that I'd see like float through Sony and this whole hierarchy that they went. It's like, oh, we've got so many places to put this. Oh, we can even put our own stuff. We put it over here on Crackle. Nobody watches Crackle. Like it's just but at least somebody bought it, and at least some of the stuff got would have a home, whatever it is, and people watched it. People would watch these things and they'd have a home for it. But But the Batgirl one, that's just dumb. That was just a dumb move. Like people would have watched that one. You can always get superhero fans into the theater. So, but
It probably wasn't going to be very good.
Yeah.
But they've released an awful lot of not very good movies. I'm sure George Lucas wishes they canceled the Star Wars Christmas special.
Yeah. I think DC fans, we've gotten used to the ideas that this stuff isn't very good. So yeah. Just kind of take it on the nose and go, oh, it's good. And just kind of, complain about the fact that the animated stuff is somehow better than everything else they're doing. But
isn't that amazing how most of the animated shows are better?
Yeah. This sounds ridiculous coming on me, especially since I don't have any kids, but like it's like the League of Super Pets movie was fantastic. It was just, it was ridiculously fun. It was this whole thing right on point, had some inside jokes to it without, taking itself too seriously. It was really well done. And you were walking around going like, let these writers do it. Let these writers write the stuff for the live action, whatever it is. I don't know why they're having such a hard time getting something decent there. And I don't want to completely throw it out. Like the movie, The Batman was fantastic. And I think the Joker movie was really well done and a few others, but anything where they try and like do the Justice League and the whole thing like that, it seems to just really fall in on itself. And I think it's because they get people that they claim they love this stuff, but I don't think they really do. And so,
how about She-Hulk, attorney at law? That's
fantastic.
I saw on TV.
Yeah,
that's gonna be fantastic.
Yeah, I love that one. So
awesome.
I have a bit
a new low.
No, I've been reading She-Hulk. I've been reading She-Hulk since I was a kid. That's actually a fantastic comedy. Yeah, it's a comedy. It's a hardcore.
Don't get the comic stuff.
Yeah, it's a comedy. It was designed to be a complete.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Nobody's taking that one seriously. It is what it is. Yeah.
It was designed from the beginning to poke fun at its own genre.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like If you ever watched like Deadpool's another one too, where like it's what they call a fourth wall breaker, where he's constantly like talking to the audience and just kind of making fun of like, we all know this is ridiculous. Don't take it. So, it's like this is it is what it is, and everybody loves it too. The new the Harley Quinn animated series that's on HBO Max does a lot of that too, and that's not how she was designed, but they've kind of made her into it, and it's it really kind of makes fun of the entire DC universe. And again, that's where everybody gets behind it. They go like, yeah, we all know this is silly. This is fun.
Yeah.
But good stuff. Plus, She-Hulk's got Tatiana Maslany in it. I think I can't always mispronounce her last name, but she was in Orphan Black, and she was in the new Perry Mason, a bunch of other ones. So she's fantastic. And she's been into my record store, if I might say so. She's actually.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
It's one of my first celebrity visits was Tatiana. Showing my logo off today. Going to a concert tonight, so I try and wear it when I go into town.
A little bit of promotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got the best SEO t-shirt on today.
Which one you got?
All together.
Nice.
There you go.
Don't even have to say it anymore, do you? Really?
Yeah.
I need to get one that says, well, actually.
Yeah.
Is it John Moo who has the pinned post from the Big Lebowski?
That's just your opinion, man. Yeah,
that's your opinion.
I want to get John Mueller one that you can walk around at shows that just is like, nope. Or it just doesn't work that way. So, no. He throws that it depends every now and then. Most of the time it's just him going like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. So, I love it when he does that. That's one of my favorite things in the world. I've been toying around with an article that was just like, the top 10 times, that John Mueller broke an SEO's heart, It was just some completely conflated idea that this guy throws out in the world and what it is, and just for him to come back and go like, no, not at all.
Hey, any of you guys that spend any more time on Twitter than I do, which is not hard to do, I haven't heard much from Ilya lately. Is he still?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Active?
I haven't seen
vacation
him
or
in a while
something?
either. Yeah, I haven't seen him around much either. I actually mentioned, I dropped his name actually this week about the domain authority thing too, because I was quoting him from when I met him once in Sydney, and he had kind of just blatantly went to like this, said that that the domain authority was shite, and that PA was close to something that they used, but it wasn't exactly like the right formula kind of stuff. But at least it was in the realm of reality, and he's that all the time. But otherwise, yeah, I haven't seen him really respond much to anymore, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of letting John and Martin kind of take most of the action these days.
Slack.
I got to imagine to keep Ilya quiet, there had to be some physical restraints involved, because so
He used
much
to love doing
against,
that. Yeah.
very much against his character.
Yeah, it was one of my greatest moments, like in my SEO history, was at that Sydney conference, and it was I can't remember what it was. Barry puts it on. Don Barry puts it on Sydney, and it used to be an SMX show, and they rebranded it because they didn't want to pay the license anymore. But I had come out, and they had this what was advertised as this closed room session with Google, and I know they had me and Greg and a couple others that were like on a panel right next to like Gary. That were up there just to kind of like go through and talk about this kind of stuff to it. And but it mostly just became a Q&A session with Gary about some big stuff to it. And I remember this has got to be like, I mean, this is pre-pandemic, so maybe even a year before the pandemic was even a thing. But there was a major goof up at Google where like the index hadn't updated for like a week, and there was just a major shutdown. And like, I mean, Google's still working what it is, but it's kind of similar to recently where the index just wasn't updating for a while. And so I remember bluntly kind of said, hey, what happened? What actually happened with this one? And he was really to the point and kind of explained all of it, and that somebody had actually screwed up a file that was going to get pushed up, and that was the index. And just every system that led up to that was supposed to keep that from happening failed, and it was just a cataclysmic like failure along that point as far as that kept things doing. And then they're running around trying to find another copy of it, and they couldn't. I mean, it was it sounded like an old school software company, not the massive thing that Google is these days. And remember after hearing that whole story, I just went like, so fired, that guy's fired, right? He doesn't exist anymore. He's his head's on a pike out in front of the office and the whole thing to it. He goes, no, we explained what happened. Well, that's very giving of you. But yeah, but he was very forthcoming, so maybe that's why I don't let him out on the road anymore. but it was.
I don't envy John. Being in I've worked in corporate situations for many years, and I can imagine that 50% of the questions John Moo gets is are rubbish, just like stuff you said before. But 10% are probably stuff he can't answer because he doesn't know exactly how things are working today, because they're changing stuff all the time. Well,
sure,
what do you do in that case? So hence the cryptic stuff he puts out.
Sure.
Or we would say is cryptic. It's not a definitive answer, or not answering the question. But I think he's very, very spot on to that. He answers the questions people ask, and whereas people are normally asking questions that they want a broader answer, but he won't give a broad answer because you can take that in so many wrong ways. So yeah, I think he does a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about him too, is that there's no bullshit about him. If he doesn't know, he'll say so, but he usually knows.
Yeah. But yeah, it's either he usually knows and can tell you, and whatever it is, it's said it many, many times over the past, and they give a lot, right? I think it's become a really popular thing to do, to make it this like, oh, Google won't tell you anything, whatever it is. And I go, they tell you a lot. They tell you a lot more than they really need to, given that it's a proprietary system that they own, right? They don't need to, and especially for the big free part of the business, like that they really need to do. But they give you a lot of information on the stuff, and the stuff that they don't is either like Doc said, like he doesn't know, and or like he does know in proprietary, and there's no way to actually for him to tell it without giving away the wrong stuff. Or, I would say that another option is that if he actually shared it, it would just cause like so many other follow-up questions that would lead down a wrong path with this one. There's no way to get out of it. But
well, I think whoever their spokesman of the moment happens to be, they have to be very cognizant of the fact that any gray area in a statement, there's going to be 5 or 6 people are going to jump on a bandwagon with some misinterpretation, and the next thing you know, they got 1,000 people following their advice how to take advantage of that and abuse it. So they've got to be very, very cautious. And that, I think they got spoiled and we got spoiled with Matt Cutts, because that guy could think on his feet and be very, very precise without giving anything away. And, it's just, they got to be careful what they say, because there's always going to be somebody that reads something into it that's not there. And they go and spout it off to their 300 followers who retweet it and repost it and share it. And next thing you know, it's turned into a massive cluster.
Yeah.
And amongst that, they tell us exactly what they're going to be doing kind of several years ahead. So mobile first was a very good example. They told us for a long time, you need to make your site mobile friendly. And 12 months after they said that, people go, well, no, it doesn't make any difference. I've done all this and it's not making any difference in my site. But the people that are saying that have only ever been out a little speedboat. They've never tried to turn a super tanker. And that's the thing. When you do something like that, you've got to turn this huge, great big, whatever monolithic bit of code, etc. to it. So they're actually giving us this advice way in advance. And I don't think anybody who has actually followed what Google said has lost out. It just may take some time. It's not immediate. And yes, if you're trying to do something against some very hard, stiff competition, then you probably need to go and find other stuff. But if you follow Google's advice, it will not do you any harm.
Yeah, I hate the transparency. I love the old days where they told you nothing. They treated you like a mushroom. That was perfect for me, because most of what they tell you is useless shit that you should already know.
Now, that mushroom syndrome works well for me because I've been married for 33 years. So.
Hey, like I'm telling you, 90% of the people in this business now wouldn't have lasted a week 25 years ago.
No, my favorite thing to do is when people start arguing is just point out that their little anecdotes don't equal data.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which 99 times out of 100 is the case.
Yeah. Most of the time, the data doesn't even really tell you what they think it tells them. Like,
Well, how many hundreds of the folks in our industry don't know the difference between causation and correlation, for Christ's sake? The vast majority of them.
Still a mystery to everebody at the Moz camp. It's just, and everybody, all the things. Yeah.
I think that's a prerequisite for being hired over.
Yeah.
Semi-retarded. So.
It was good. Funny. One of my favorite times that somebody jumped into it, and this is Ryan Jones, who's hilarious. And has a site where he usually does kind of SEO satire stuff. But there was one time where John was replying back to somebody about word count, and he basically said, look, no human over at Google is counting words. Like, this is not the way this works, whatever it is. And Ryan, who was just being completely hilarious about it, kind of goes, all right, so you're seeing there's a robot that does it. There's a robot that comes in and does this stuff, and he was just being doing, and there's so many people that like just thought he was being serious, that it was whatever it is. And John, and I think I was in there, and the whole thing, everybody went like, he's kidding, don't let him.
Too late. Somebody's already quoted it and built a PDF around it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just an entire series of stuff, and it's ridiculous.
For a while, years ago, when Alta Vista stopped being a search engine, I used to run a fake Alta Vista Twitter account. So every time something happened on Google or Yahoo or whatever, I was all over that tweet and stuff. That never happens to us.
That was a fun one.
There's so many old websites that should be brought back. just for the laughs.
Yeah. Just with
The internet has gotten so boring.
just an I told you attitude to it too as well. But yeah.
You know, I saw something that was verified today on Facebook that I had never heard before. Maybe some of you guys did. That I don't even remember how many years ago it was. At some point in time, the city of Topeka, Kansas, decided to rename their city Google.
Yep.
For a short period, trying to win some sort of a contest. Okay.
They wanted
And
Google Fiber
Google
to roll out.
and Google simultaneously changed their name to Topeka. I thought, okay, that's the kind of sense of humor I miss back in the old days when Google was still smaller and some of that thinking was done between 3 people rather than 300. That was funny. I had never heard that though.
Yeah, I think that was back when Google was rolling out fiber, and they were trying to decide who would be the next city to get free Google Fiber, and Topeka went,
That's what it was.
Yeah.
we are willing to go as any length to get this. Google wants to impress me, roll fiber out into the middle of nowhere into farmland. Wire up all these schools out in the middle of nowhere that have lousy internet or no access at all.
Yeah. Either that or inner city stuff. That'd be a good
You're
one,
lucky
too.
you got running water out there, Steve.
Well, we got plenty of running water. It runs downhill. It runs through our basement. It runs.
Running in lots of places it's not supposed to.
That's the problem with water. It's either too much where you don't want it or not enough where you do.
Yeah. You could just ship everything out to California. We need it. We're bad. So.
Oh, bad.
Yeah.
One of my Nevada YouTube channels that I follow spends a lot of time on Lake Mead, and they were all excited when there was water rolling down the arroyos, and it's like, here comes some water, and they got super excited. Not that it's going to be enough to really help,
Nope.
but at least it's something.
I'm afraid Lake Mead is in its last legs.
That's really going to
Yeah.
disappear, you think?
Colorado
again?
River is suffering. It is.
Oh, its water level is way, way down. And what we're seeing now, it's blame it on global warming or whatever. Now we're seeing extremes. You got 1 or 2 years of drought, then 1 or 2 years of flooding, and there's an impending risk of massive flooding in California. We get a real good winter with lots of snow buildup. There's going to be 15, 20 feet of water in the San Joaquin Valley, and that's going to put some real produce and fruit and vegetable shortages on shelves all the way across the country.
Yeah.
And it's all mismanagement. I mean, besides the global warming being an accelerant of the thing, it's just mismanagement. We've mismanaged the Colorado River tremendously.
Back in
From
the 90s when I
irrigation,
was-
Doc, or evaporation?
No, it's a whole flurry of things. You've got contamination, you've got mismanagement of irrigation systems, so they're allowing an awful lot of seepage into the ground and evaporation where it didn't have to be. For instance, the Imperial Valley, most of the big canals down there are earthen. They're not concrete. And those that are concrete are not sealed concrete. They're simply poured in place panels with gaps that I have put my arm between those panels.
Oh,
into the
really?
mud.
Wow, they're that big.
I mean, gaps like this at times. So, you lose a lot of water over time because when you got 30 feet of water sitting in the All-American Canal, you can bet that pressure is pushing an awful lot of that water down into the soil. And the fact that it's saturated is, it's very difficult to compute how much you're losing when you've got that many cubic meters per minute coming through, but you're losing a lot.
And John Oliver did a great piece not too long ago about the Colorado River and where kind of the origins of that problem. And it was really just a really bad math equation early on that basically overestimated.
Totally
how it is.
miscalculated.
Yeah. and everybody, it was basically a really it was a really unsophisticated game of calling dibs, is how most people got their water rights early on, and had nothing to do with population or projected growth or anything along those lines.
Which
And
is
so it's-
kind of parallel to what we were saying a few minutes ago about looking at data that isn't really data.
Yeah.
And then you add in all of the man-made lakes for housing developments in the middle of deserts.
Yep.
Like
Yeah,
Las Vegas with
crazy.
billions of gallons of water sucked out of Lake Mead so that the quote unquote rich people could have a beautiful lake out in their front yard in a desert.
Yeah.
I mean,
Most of that's there, except for the
We're
casinos.
surrounded by
apparently.
lawn.
Yeah.
Just makes
Yeah.
no sense.
Except for the casinos, apparently, who are actually very good at recycling their stuff.
Yes.
All their stuff is really good, but yeah, everything else is bad. And then there's some wackadoodle that's trying to build some kind of water themed resort out in the middle of the desert that's outside of that area too. And I'm going, are you kidding me, man? What are you doing? Like, you're not paying attention?
when I was in school in the 90s, when I was studying architecture and land use and all that fun stuff, we had written proposals for all of these big concrete irrigation canals to not only have them concreted instead of dirt, but then to build a cover over them to reduce the amount of evaporation, and then make those covers solar panels.
Yeah.
And, little things like that. Everybody goes, oh, the cost. Well, now we're here 30 years down the road going, oops. Like, if you'd have spent the money back then, you wouldn't have as big a problem today. Or like letting, California grow almonds, one of the most water intense crops in the world. It's from the Mediterranean. And all of a sudden we're going to grow them here in the desert. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Almonds and rice, and it just, edamame. It just talking, are you kidding me? Yeah. It's the reason why citrus was out here in the first place. It was just
So a long and ridiculous topic that the only people who don't pay attention are the politicians and the guys with the money.
Yeah. It doesn't go away because back in those 90s, Steve,
Oh,
I was living in San Francisco, and I was in a Commonwealth Club on the agriculture committee because people were just like with blinders about agriculture in California. I'm like,
one of my anecdotes is when I lived in New Mexico, most of us had native landscapes, just desert and cactus and rocks.
yeah,
Every once in a while you'd get somebody who'd want a lawn. And but all the roads there are used as to get the water out of there. They're used as drainage. There are no sewers or anything like that. And our neighbor across the street put in sod, and 3 months later this big storm came down, the rain came down the roads, picked up his entire yard and sent it down the road. He did that 3 years in a row. He resodded his place, and 3 years in a row, the water would come and it would take away his yard and send it into the arroyo. It did never be seen again. And it's like, after the third time, the whole neighborhood's like, really? You're going to do this again? There's a reason why we don't have yards. But it's what happens. You get a lot of people who come from other parts of the world.
from other parts. Yeah.
And, you get, city folk move out into the country and then complain about the smell. You get people who come from wet climates, move to dry climates and complain about the lack of yards. And it's like, you can't move somewhere new and think that your old way still applies.
It'll be the same.
I lived out in the country, as it were, and there were several houses on a community well, and it was a subdivision that never divided because the ground didn't perk.
Mhm.
And then the water commissioner and the landowner, the new water commissioner was his brother-in-law, and all of a sudden, all these lots perked. Hey, what a
Mhm.
surprise. And then houses were built and people moved in, and they were going like, ew, dirt gets on our white carpets. It isn't out in the country, and the well water, it looks different, you know? And most of them were gone in 6 months to a year. Cause it was just like,
Good riddance.
And we're dealing with a water issue out here now with the local water company. We're on a well, but our neighbor next door, they're the last house on water utility. And
okay,
they've got like a 1-inch line that gets all the way to them. Well, in the last 3 years, we've added 7 or 8 more houses on this road. And every single one of them went to the water company and said, hey, do we tie into the water or should we dig a well? And the water company said, come on, tie into us, and got their money. Well, now my neighbor at the end of the road has no water. By the time it gets to him, he can't flush the toilet and do dishes at the same time
yeah.
because everybody upstream of him has taken away all that water pressure. And now they're coming out and saying, well, to fix this water problem, we need a 25-foot easement off the front of your property so we can run new water lines. And we're like, no, your water line's already across the street. Use that. Rebuild that, but you don't need to come into my property. And then they're like offering ridiculous low numbers. And it's different for every person on the road, which is amazing.
Oh, the offer's different?
Yes. They're offering
Get
like,
together.
yeah, well, they offered us like 1.5 cents a square foot. But my next door neighbor, they offered him 16 cents a square foot. And I'm like, well, why is that? And they're like, well, you're zoned agricultural. It's like, but that 25 feet along the road is the same in front of him as it is in front of me. What's behind it doesn't matter. And so apparently I got the whole project stopped because I talked to my neighbors and said, how much are you getting offered? And we all found out everybody was getting a different price. So we all went, okay, whoever got the most, we all want that. And the water company's like, oh, hold on, we need to relook at our budget. It's like, yeah, I bet you do. But so now that people on this road are filing complaints with the state about the water company not being able to deliver water that they claimed they could when they hooked everybody in.
And the real heart of their problem there is mismanagement. There was no planning whatsoever in the original
Right.
development.
They didn't even know most of these houses were out here. One of my neighbors got a plan, and the water line runs right through his house. And he's like, "You can't run this here." And they're like, "Why not?" Because my house is there. And they're like, "What house?" There's no house on this aerial photo, and it's a satellite photo from 15 years ago.
It's like Hitchhiker's Guide. You have to build a bypass.
I love it. Yeah.
I'd like
Sorry
to
about
say we
your
don't have
loss.
the same problems in the UK, but we do. Pretty much. Having said that, the street I'm in, Lane, it's in the countryside next to the racecourse, but we don't have a neighbour a quarter of a mile either side of it, which is nice. We do have 4 new neighbours over the road. That used to be a cow pasture, but they built 4 houses in it. Then up the road, they're building another 4 houses. So the road is shut for a week at the moment as they're putting new power lines in up the road, which is fantastic. There's no through traffic at all, and it's really quiet and lovely. But we've got no sewerage here, so we've got a septic tank sort of thing. So, but we do have water coming in and power, etc. So that's not so bad. But every time that they've built 4 new houses up the road, we're thinking, well, okay, that actually puts a strain on our power, gas, electricity, and most importantly for me, the broadband. But up the road, because when we moved here 10 years ago, we had 2 megabit broadband. It's now 40 because I complained a lot. They're getting a gig up the road.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh,
3
can I tap into this?
I get 3 megabit here and signed up for Starlink over a year ago and still don't have it.
Yeah.
And now they're talking about fiber optic grants. And I've talked to both the power company and the phone company, and they all said they're all doing it. It's like, that's fine. I don't care. Whoever gets here first gets my money.
Yeah, gets it. Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And they're like, well, we don't know what it's going to cost. It's like, I don't care. I really don't, because for a long time I was
I
running
gotta have it.
DSL and
Yeah.
satellite, and I was paying $250 a month to keep up just so I could be connected.
Yeah, we got
And there's no way they're going to charge me that.
we got fiber in our neighborhood too, and this is Burbank, of course, so it's probably less of a fight to get it, but it finally lit up. It's nice. It's the only problem is that I'm having to go through and update all my equipment because everything else had was just designed for lesser. So like the Wi-Fi started capping out, and so we had things. It's an old house, so it did like things don't pass through. So I had a whole system up in the ceiling, and I'm gonna have to replace all those and everything. But the times when you can
It's
really
a nice
tap,
problem to have.
it really
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Is a nice problem.
Yeah, the times when you can tap
So when you-
directly into it, like when we actually like our Apple TV taps right into the line for what for what it is, and so streaming is just delightful now. There's no way that just pops right on. It's amazing. So
Well, we've got about 3.5 years ago, they installed fiber right here across my front yard and ran it about 7 miles, I guess, and finished the whole damn project in under 3 weeks. But that's like 3.5 years ago, and as of yet, there is nobody on that fiber.
nobody to
Because they
offer
ran
it.
the budget
Oh,
out, put
no.
it in the poles and the cable, but they've got no budget left over to put in the equipment to drive it.
So what you do is you go out front, you accidentally cut the fiber, so they've got a reason to route it into your house right there.
Yeah, tap it in.
Yeah, they wouldn't even realize it because I'm sure they're not even monitoring it. There's nobody on it.
That's crazy. 7 years,
No, about 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
But just because they spent all the money putting the fiber in, figure, well, next year, and then they ran the numbers, actually looked at some data to determine what it's going to cost. Well, it's going to take the next 5 years worth of budget combined to be able to buy this equipment. We're not going to do that. They'd rather just write off the fiber. Gotta love third world living.
Well, it's no better. When we used to have our co-location facility in San Francisco, they had a massive failure. I don't remember all the details. And basically they lost most of their switches in the whole building. And they were trying to bring up their most important customers first, obviously. And we got a hold of one of the techs, and it's like, look, I have 2 switches. I will bring them to you. One of them goes on my cabinet. The other one goes wherever you want to put it, because nobody could get equipment. Because it was like a late Friday night or late Saturday night or something. They're like, when can you have me those switches? And it's like, I can be there in 20 minutes. It's like, bring them. And they lit up our server cabinet and a couple's right next to us. And then they lit up whatever else they wanted to light up. And I didn't care. I will buy the hardware. I will spend the money to get internet out here.
Well, we're about wrapping up here, coming up on the top of the hour. What's anybody got on their table for this week? Anything interesting? Simon?
Yeah, I've got an interesting project coming in, which I'm trying to start with a nationwide UK company, which should be interesting. That goes on till February. I've been trying to shift a load of print work. You wouldn't believe what people do with print these days. I'm old school. I learned to do proper print and everything. And so doing a load of brochure work, etc., for a company, and they go and shoved it on Vistaprint, and it's just horrible. It's all online stuff. I had to redraw everything just to fit their stupid, horrible interface. Because and then you put it in, it's just an image. Horrible. So I'm trying to forget that next week.
Pick a bad week to quit drinking, right?
Nicely done.
Sarah?
That's more writing. I have a couple of long form articles and email messaging, bringing that up to speed for a client, getting the email service provider set up, that kind of stuff.
Terry, what kind of evil plans to take over the world are you working on?
Not much. Probably watch the Jays lose a few more times this week.
You can just watch some 1978 reruns if that's all you want to see.
I'm not working much these days. Not inspired.
Well, I know part of what you're working on, Steve.
Some of it, yeah. let's see, we rolled out a new website last week. We'll be rolling out another one next week and starting a third probably by the weekend. And then we're going to launch our beta of our real estate broker admin software probably Friday. So yeah, there's a lot going on here at Web Narwhal, which is really cool. Of course, you know, that means more work, but now that we're done cutting hay, it won't be quite so painful. No more working double shifts, at least for a couple weeks.
Until the next cutting.
Yeah.
Jeff?
We're busy. We've got one client whose media plan gets presented next week. We've got their website is finally going to be ready for us to start its SEO audit on it, so we can get in on that. We've got another client whose website's almost in the can, so we can start their paid media program. So yeah, it's a typical thing. It's after weeks of hurry up and wait kind of stuff. We're finally pulling the trigger on a few things, so it's nice. It's
Feast
good
or
to-
famine, right?
Yep, typical stuff to it. But yeah, always the great thing about being in marketing is everybody else just to take their time, and then you have to kind of make up for the gap at the end of it. As well, the launch date's still the same. You have to come out of this date. So
You bet.
great. Happy
Well,
to do it.
like Steve, I'm heavily involved in the Web Narwhal growth right now, and it's been challenging and interesting and fun and very encouraging. So that is taken off, and we're trying to take on some new systems to stay organized. Or getting used to a new CRM that we like much better than the previous one that we were trying to use. Because as things scale up, it gets harder and harder to keep up without some organization. So that's where we're at. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. And we will see you